Dark Summit is a snowboarding game that was developed by Radical Entertainment, published by THQ and released on the PS2, Xbox and Gamecube in November of 2001. At time of its release it received mixed reviews ranging from 6 to 8 out of 10, and I couldn't find any information on sales figures for this title, which usually isn't a good sign. I was quite intrigued when I knew I was going to review this game. As a kid I saw Dark Summit on store shelves almost every time I went browsing for new games back in the PS2's heyday. I always passed on this one because I thought the cover art looked boring, an incredibly shallow reason I know, but I was like 12 years old, so don't judge me. While I was very interested to finally take a look at the game, let's just say that the 12-year-old me made the right choice. So what is Dark Summit? Well, it's a snowboarding game with an incredibly thin plot. The premise for this game is that some famous snowboard and ski location known as Mount Garrick is slowly being closed off for unknown reasons. Something to do with the military being up to shady stuff and blocking off the peak of the mountain, and as a rebellious snowboarder, you decide to explore the mountain and find out what they are up to and eventually put a stop to their sinister plans. See, I told you it was a thin plot. Now, as far as gameplay goes, Dark Summit unfortunately doesn't offer up much in that department either. It sort of plays like a poorly made version of the original Tony Hawk games. There are 4 areas to complete and they're all basically different drop-off points on the same mountain. So just like the old Tony Hawk games, you'll do a run, and within that run you'll be tasked with pulling off as many tricks and completing as many challenges as possible, and once you reach a certain milestone, you'll unlock the next area. Most missions are quite simple. You'll be tasked with performing a certain number of tricks, reaching a specific area before the time runs out, or chasing or being chased by another snowboarder. None of these missions are offensively bad, but the game is stiff and clunky, and you'll be restarting the challenges so many times that you'll eventually become sick of them. As mentioned before, you can perform tricks, but in all honesty, the only reason to do so would be to unlock new outfits and new boards that offer no real boost to your stats, so they're just a bit of a cosmetic change. There are basic and advanced tricks to perform, but because there is no real reward for doing so, and performing tricks actually slows you down in some cases, there is no real incentive to get stuck into all of the advanced moves and learn new combos. While the game is clunky and repetitive, on the bright side it isn't something you'll have to sink too much time into. If you know what you're doing, you could probably finish the game in less than 2 hours. For a game released in late 2001, I know not to expect to be blown away, and most of the game looks fine. Character models are more than passable, environments don't look bad, and the snow looks like snow. Where I was underwhelmed is that the game was clearly supposed to take place in a slightly exaggerated reality, and with that you'd expect to see some really crazy and over-the-top designs to environments. Sadly, Dark Summit falls between 2 stools here, and it doesn't look good enough to blow you away in terms of realism, and isn't crazy enough to be interesting as some sort of punkish alternate reality, and when I really think about it, a lot of the areas just look messy. Sonically, this game borrows a bunch of tracks from the genre of drum and bass, and it is a bit mind-numbing after a short while. I understand with this sort of game that you have to have something a little fast-paced to add excitement, but as I loaded up the same challenge for the 15th time, it just started to wear on me. I would also talk about the voice acting, but there isn't really enough to comment on, whether you're talking about in-game or in the cutscenes. You could probably group all of the cutscenes together in one video, and it would be less than 5 minutes. And speaking of cutscenes, some of them are just bizarre. The best way to sum up Dark Summit is to say that it feels like one of those games early in a console's life cycle. The sort of game that's rushed out just after the console's launch because the new system needs games, and a small team within the development studio puts this together while the rest of the team works on a bigger project to be released a year or 2 later. What does Dark Summit have to offer? Well, not a lot actually. If you're desperate to have a complete collection, then luckily it's dirt cheap nowadays, but at the very most you'll get a few hours of mildly frustrating fun out of this game, but you'd probably be best avoiding it altogether.